serious, Reddit. What is your strangest glitch in a Matrix moment that cannot be explained? Story 1 saw a dude with no face driving a car. No features at all. It was just blank. I did more than just glance at him. I was staring. Just smooth skin and a men's haircut. I've never told anyone because it's so ridiculous sounding, and I don't think people would believe me. Probably a rational explanation for it, I suppose, but man, what the... Story 2 stopped at the gas station on my way to work one morning. I take out my debit card and take my car keys with me, and leave everything in the car, pay for my stuff, and throw my debit card in the metal cup I have in my car. Literally half a second later, I look down, and my card is gone. Pulled apart everything trying to look for it, and couldn't find it. I go to work and go home to find it sitting on my desk. Double-check my bank account to make sure it was the card I used, and it was. To this day, I still have no idea what happened. Edit, wow, this blew up overnight. To answer most questions that I saw no carbon monoxide leak. We have a monitor in our house, and that was the first thing I thought to check. I didn't pull up to a pump, just the normal parking in front of the cutie, and was there maybe 7 minutes total, and no concussions in my life ever. Story 3 had to do an exam at school. Started off pretty normal, then pretty soon I realized I'd done it before somewhere, and I remembered what I got wrong the first time. So I pretty much aced the text. The thing is, this was a national test, so there's no way I could have done it already. I have no clue where I would have even done it before anyway, as none of my classmates remembered it. That was the only time I got a high distinction in science class, lol. Story 4, I've posted this before, but my family go to a garden center near my town every winter, pretty Christmas lights. Well, this one year, the day before we were supposed to go, I had a dream that on our way, the tire of the car came off, and we crashed hard. It was such a horrible, graphic dream. My mom's legs had been crushed, my dad stuck, etc. Well, I told my mom in the morning, and she joked that she'd checked the wheels. She actually must have. She said the car had felt weird, and the dream unnerved her. Lo and behold, the tire is loose and needs to be taken to a mechanic. Really weird experience, especially as I've never had a dream feel so real before. Story 5, when my son was about 4 years old one night, he started hounding me to ring Nana. I thought it odd to begin with, as he had never asked to call her before, so I just put him up for an hour or so, and he came back and insisted that I call her. Turns out she was sitting on her lounge, experiencing a massive tachycardia event and couldn't breath. I called an ambulance and met her at the hospital. Same week, she had a pacemaker and defib unit implanted to fix the problem. To this day, I cannot explain what drove him to get me to call, but I'm very glad he did. He doesn't even remember it. Story 6, around 15 years, I was on a small road trip with my family. My younger brother and I were in the back seat. I start thinking about a song in my head from the video game Road Rash 3, which at that point I hadn't played in a few years. A few seconds later, my younger brother starts humming the song out loud next to me. I still have no idea what happened. Did we both think about that song randomly at the same time? Did I think it and project it telepathically? Did I read his mind? Why that song, years after we had last played the game, still bugs me to this day. Story 7, I'm so glad this question was asked because the craziest happened today. After class today, my friend and I were driving back home, and a car passed us, but only there was no person in the driver's seat, just a dog, and nothing else. My friend and I both saw it and freaked. A lot of weird goes down in my town. Story 8, I was kind of interested in a girl a few years back. I didn't know her too much, but I'm sure she noticed it. I didn't want to rush things, so I didn't insist too much. Saw her a few times at friends' parties and the like. Then suddenly, within 1 week, I crossed her path twice, randomly, in the city. The first time it was awkward. The second time, she was clearly afraid and apparently thought I was following her. Total coincidence. Story 9, I was looking through a dating hookup app when I found my doppelganger. Well, race change doppelganger. I sent the pic to my closest friend, and he was like, "Ha, it's you as a black dude." I sent the guy a message saying, "Haha, I have the same face." He replied, "Thanks." Story 10, I arrived 10 minutes early to school one day. So I put on my headphones and started to listen to a 10-minute track I loved. When it was over, I started walking to the entrance, but nobody was there. It was always full of people waiting for it to open, so I thought I miscalculated the time and I was late. But when I checked my watch, only 2 minutes had passed since I arrived, and I sat there for the remaining 8 minutes thinking what the had happened. Story 11, not my story, but my grandmother's. When my mother was in HS, Grandma had recurring dreams in which Mom was marrying a brown-haired professor who wore a fisherman's cap and smoked a pipe. My dad, whom my mom met maybe 5 years or so after Grandma had those dreams, is a brown-haired professor who wears a fisherman's cap and smoked a pipe until Mom made him quit. Okay, he didn't officially become a professor until after they married, but still. Story 12, my bedroom at the time, lead into the living room that you could see into the kitchen. We also had a bathroom that was directly off our room. In the corner, you couldn't get to it unless you were in our room. I woke up one afternoon. I remember sitting up, checking my phone, and lighting a cigarette. I got out of bed, opened the bedroom door, walked into the living room to turn the thermostat up. I saw my ex in the kitchen fiddling around with a coffee pot. Then he started walking toward the back of the house, into the other bedroom. I said, "Hey, you're up early." He looked at me and kept on walking. I went back into our room and sat on the bed. After a few minutes, I called his name, and he opened the bathroom door and said, yeah, apparently he was in the bathroom the whole time. I was very confused and super freaked out because I could have sworn I saw him in the kitchen. There's no way it was him if he was in the bathroom. It shook me up pretty bad. Story 13 TLDR up front. I have a doppelganger out there. This happened to people I know, not to me directly. A woman who works with my mom was out doing her grocery shopping one night and ran into me at the supermarket. She told my mom about the encounter the next day and asked why I didn't recognize her, as we saw each other once every few weeks when I'd go and help with any heavy lifting at their store. My mom confirmed that it couldn't have been me, as I was at home. The woman also mentioned feeling oddly nauseous during the interaction. I was about 16 or 17 at the time. Another woman I know said she didn't know I walked through the park near her home after work. Dumbfounded by her observation, I listened as she explained that she'd seen me every so often after work, walking briskly through a large park, which I do know of, but have only driven past, as if I was exercising. She said I walked close by her the previous evening, and she was going to speed up to catch up with me and say hello, but as she started, she began to feel ill, so she slowed down and then sat on a bench for a few minutes. By then, she'd lost sight of me. This happened about 3 years ago, and both occurrences were miles apart. Edit, I can't believe I forgot about this, but it happened when I was 20. I was living on campus on the ground floor of a 3-story building. There were only 36 people in the building, so I knew everyone by sight at least when this happened. A new guy moved into the 3rd floor. We'd exchanged pleasantries, and I knew his name and what floor he lived on, but not much else. I was coming out the front door one morning, and he was coming down the stairs. He said, "Oh, I just saw your sister going up the stairs." I asked him what he meant, and he said, "Your sister? She's here all the time?" She wears her hair the same as you. I used to change my hair a lot. At the time, it was midway down my back and fire truck red. There was nobody on campus with hair like mine. I noped out and went back inside. Story 14, not the strangest, but the most recent. Early last month, I went online to pay a bill like I've done for years. I get to the last page before finishing, and the web page freaks out, with a multitude of display issues before finally receiving an error message. After several attempts to pay, I give up, assuming the site is having issues. I go back 2 days later and pay my bill, and it goes through normally, with me getting my usual text and email notifying me I paid. I'm very confused a few weeks later when I check my email and find a notice from the company whose bill I paid, with a semi-threatening email saying the bill is due that day, and do I need to set up a payment plan? I've been dealing with the company for almost a decade and have never been late in paying. I check my credit card account, and there's no record of me paying, not are the text or email I received still in my records. I pay the bill and chalk it up to a senior moment on my part. Last week I get my one credit card bill. It says I never paid my last bill, so now I've got that bill to pay, plus the interest. I find my previous bill, open but with the invoice in place, in my living room. Hey Race, why I'm posting, I'm physically disabled and can't drive, and I always pay that credit card bill in person after they upped my payment years ago. A family member always takes me to my credit union to pay that bill. And like me, he remembers us going down to pay the bill they say I never paid. He and I even remember a conversation we had on the way down to the credit union and going grocery shopping afterward, but yet the bill is unpaid and the bill is in my possession still. TLDR, have had 2 bills in the last month I didn't pay, despite in one case having a witness that I did so. Story 15, during my freshman year of high school, I was just talking with my friends like usual, and then one of them pointed to a dude walking across the other side of the courtyard and said, "Hey, look, it's you, Vectorog." And oddly, the dude walking past had the exact same outfit and haircut as me. I didn't see his face, nor did I ever see him again. Was weird as edit typo. Story 16, I occasionally have dreams where a few months or weeks down the line, I experience that moment, but I always forget what the dream was about right up until it happens. My first experience was in 6th grade when I had a dream where I was having a conversation with my teacher. At the time, I was sat in the back of the class, and that was about when I had the dream. Fast forward 2.5 weeks, and I've been moved to the front of the class, and it happens. There she is, taking to me about some work I need to do because I was absent for a few days, and then I have this DJ VU moment, and as she's speaking, I'm staring blankly at her, remembering this conversation. I told her, and her reaction was the exact same as in my dream, facial expressions and all. To this day, I still occasionally have these dreams and moments, and to this day, there's no way I can explain them. Story 17, when I was doing my internship in College City, there was a fella across the way from me as we were traveling on the public transport line. I noticed him because he was wearing an intricate brown suit and checking a pocket watch for the time often. When we both got off at School Avenue, he had a quick pace, and was rushing ahead of me. Although he was crazy when he walked into traffic, he made it past the work van coming at him from the right, and I was terrified for him because a car was coming fast from the left. However, when the work van passed and stopped blocking my sight, so I couldn't see what became of him, he was gone. What the? I still wonder where he went 6 years later. Post-edited for privacy. Yes, I got a story. I dated this girl a few years back and put first date was weird. She was a friend of my brother, and we had known each other while before going out, kind of friends. Anyway, we're on the date, and she tells me that she had a weird dream about me. I had also had a weird dream about her that evening. She goes, first, I was driving my teacher's car on my way to see you. We were on the phone trying to find each other. You kept saying I just drove past your apartment, but I was in the middle of nowhere and got really confused. Without really thinking about it, I reply, I was on the phone with you as you constantly drove past my apartment, but it wasn't your normal car and you were really confused. She's just staring at me like I was pulling her leg. Then it dawned on me, holy, we had the same dream. We shared 4 to 5 more dreams throughout the relationship at totally random times. She was a nice woman, but we were awful for each other, TLDR girl, and I shared a dream. Story 18 saw the same truck with the same trailer and same lawnmower make left-hand turns in front of me, a block apart. Not company trucks, trailers, impossible for them to double back. Story 19, I was staying in the hospital after a concussion at 15 years old, fell backwards 8 feet, landed on my back head, on concrete. I had been out for a few days, only waking for short periods, not able to keep food or drink down. They gave me multiple CAT scans as I wasn't coming to. As expected, they thought I was badly brain damaged. My hospital bed, I was told later, as I had no memories of the visit except for when I was rolled out in a wheelchair, had the side rails up, I was somehow strapped in, as my equilibrium was I couldn't get out of it without nurse assistance. Except I did get up. This is hard to write. It's just so hard to explain the feeling of this moment. I got up, stepped over my mom, who was sleeping on a mat on the floor, walked to the window to see the amazing view of the hills cast in early dawn light. I looked at the cars way down in the parking lot, the trees behind that wall, the houses, roads, nature leading to the hillside. I felt, I guess, reset. No pain, no memory, no idea why I was there or where there was. I knew it was me the way you do, but all the stuff that would have normally been running through my head was absent. I felt completely lucid, still fresh, knew very much at peace. I never felt that way before, since drugs never come with such clarity. Except I didn't get up. I couldn't have. It wasn't possible, yet I know to my core, in the way you feel yet can't describe in words, that I saw what I did. I know that I was there awake, looking out that window, at one of the clearest visions my eyes have ever witnessed, with this incredible feeling of redemption renewal. I don't know, but it felt incredible, so true to my human being. FFS, I don't know. I remember it like a one-man alien abduction with no probing. The next few weeks I needed help walking, eating, etc. It was months before I was okay again. I still have minor equilibrium issues 20 years later. I was at the hospital with a friend, recently saw the view from the same floor, but wrong side. Chills, man. I feel like maybe that was the first time I became aware of my soul. But everyone experiences that. Most don't need concussions to get there. Story 20, you know, the creepy child in a horror movie. The one that doesn't smile and just stares at you. I saw one in IKEA one time. It just stared at me, as if it can penetrate my soul with its eyes. I went to a wedding the following week, and there's that kid again looking creepy as ever, because now he's wearing a bow tie. I asked its parent if they were at IKEA, or if by any chance this kid could have been at IKEA last week. They said no, this kid's parents were actually nice. At the reception, they said they have a single friend they wanted me to meet. It turned out it was my first girlfriend's sister. Story 21, as a kid, I was sitting home alone watching TV until I lost the TV remote. I was literally tearing up my entire living room, trying to find the thing. Eventually I gave up and just sat there watching some stupid channel, and then the remote literally fell on top of my head. Story 22, in my area, there are apiaries. An old girlfriend and I were driving down a backcountry road, exploring the area, and we both saw an old lady in dark clothes tending to a few beehives in an open field not far from the road, maybe 50 yards or so from the road. She was covered in bees. I slowed down. The bees covered the woman, and then the bees all flew away, and the lady was gone. There was nowhere she could have vanished towed. We both saw it happen. Story 23, I saw my doppelganger in the airport while waiting for my luggage, even wearing the same clothes. He was from Spain, judging by the flight number on that carousel, and him from UK. No, it wasn't a mirror. Story 24, wife and I were driving out TX to come back home to Ohio. We stop at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, kind of a run-down little place. Wife goes in while I'm filling up. I finish and pay at the pump and decide to head in and use the restroom real quick. I walk out, and the wife is at the checkout paying, wall up, and the guy just starts looking at me, and then calls me out by my full name, LT. Yeah, your name is LT, drinks a lot, right? Yeah. Do we know each other? Nope. Then how do you know my name? Hi, I don't know, wife. And I look at each other, and we both got the out of there. I don't have a common name. I had never been to that gas station, let alone that town in TX ever. Every time my wife and I think about it, we can't explain it. Story 25. Playing with my friend when I was young by the pond. We spotted some boys, and being the bad that I am, pulled a blueberry-flavored lip gloss that I got free in a magazine out of my pocket for us both to use to make the boys like us. I thought that's how life worked. We started hopping along the stepping stones on the pond, and the lip gloss falls out of my pocket into the pond. Both myself and my friend saw this happen. I was pissed cause it was the only makeup my mom allowed me to have. Cut to about 5 hours later. I get home and go up to my room. Blueberry lip gloss was on my pillow. Story 26. One time, when I was maybe 7 or 8, my mom was reading The Hobbit to me. We got to a spot I had heard somewhere before. I told her I think she read this part already. She insisted we had never read it and went back to reading it to me. I started saying the lines with her word perfect. She stopped and looked at me while I continued quoting it flawlessly. Story 27. The other night, I woke up and looked at my phone, and it said 12:33, I think. Well, I went to the bathroom and got something to drink and came back to my room and checked my phone again, and it said 1100. Maybe I was just tired, but it really made me question what happened. Story 28. When I was 23, I went to a week's workshop with uni abroad to Barcelona. The workshop was based in an obscure part of the city, and I always thought I'd never be able to find that area again. Fast forward about 15 years, I score a job in Barcelona. Get off the plane, go to the hotel near my new office, and it's across from said workshop. I worked there for 3 years. When that job ends, I moved country again for about 5 years. About a month ago, I was invited to interview for a job, which I'm now in the process for. And guess where the offices are? Yup, round the corner from the workshop that I thought I'd never find again. It's got me wondering if it's coincidence, or should I just move to that area until I work out why the universe keeps sending me there. Story 29. After a bath, I went to put on clothes, blacked out, and woke up on the floor, sitting upright against the sink and dressed. I have no idea what happened. Didn't feel sore anywhere like if I'd fallen over, and it was as if I sat on the floor and dressed myself while I was unconscious. Felt like 20 minutes had passed, even though the bathroom still had steam in it. Kind of just shrugged it off, but I still think about haha. Story 30. Had an odd one at the chemist the other day. I have a very unusual surname. We are all related and know where even the most distant members live. I know for a fact my father, uncle, and me are the only males with this name in the country. Guy in front of me had his name called, my surname, and a very similar first name. Never met him or seen him before. Story 31. Once, I walked into my living room from the hallway, saw my mom in the kitchen pouring a bowl of something fully clothed, important to the story, and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" She ignored me, put something in the fridge, and walked into her room. I figured she didn't hear me and walked into my room. Not even 2 minutes later, she walks into my room, soaking wet in a towel, and tells me she had fallen asleep in the bathtub and had just woken up. Weirdest ever. Story 32. I see flashing strobes, streaks, dots of light randomly during the night and the day with no definite source. I've talked to mental health doctors about it, and they say it's normal. Story 33. Year 3 or 4 at school in the UK. So I'd have been like 7 or something. Anyway, at the end of school, we all had to line up in our year groups in the yard, and we would be led by our teacher to the front of school and either onto the bus or picked up. The pathway from the back to the front of school was narrow, so all single file. I was walking along, chatting and laughing with my peers in front and behind of me. Next thing I know, I'm stood on the path completely alone. The teacher comes running back from around the front of the school and says, "Craig, hurry, you'll miss the bus." I'd literally skipped a few minutes of time. I've always remembered it. Story 34. Senior year of high school. 30-minute lunch. My buddy and I drove all the way from my school to McDonald's, normally about a 10-minute drive. So 20 minutes minimum there and back. But we stopped by my house in between the school and the McDonald's. I grab a shirt, change, leave, drive down the street, get into an altercation with a guy who we flipped off for tailgating. Gun is pulled. We think he was across the street. Looked like a gun, but who knows, his wife in the passenger seat starts yelling at him. We part ways, go to McDonald's and order food, eat in the parking lot, deciding we were late regardless. We had no access to the time in my car, and our phones were in our lockers at the school. We also were frequent ditches tardy kids. Turns out this all occurred in 18 minutes on the dot. It's impossible, but it happened. My buddy and I still talk about it to this day, saying we went through a wormhole or my Nissan, rest in peace, somehow could time travel or slow down time. Story 35. On a 4-hour bus ride in Vietnam. Heading toward the end of the trip, when we pass a small village near a major city, the bus driver and 2 of his friends were talking, and one of them goes, "Wow, look at her." And next to the bus, I see a woman with shorts and a t-shirt on taking off her bike helmet. I think nothing of it. That is until we get to the major city, and I'm almost at my stop where I see the same exact woman doing the same exact action, taking off her helmet in the same exact motion. The bus driver and his friends also saw her and said apparently this is common to them, as they had a word to describe them. Banshee. Story 36. I ran into an old friend from high school that I hadn't seen for a decade, which was odd because I live several hundred miles from where I grew up. We did a bit of catching up, then went about our lives. 2 weeks later, I ran into him again 5,100 miles away in Germany. Story 37. The only time I've ever woke from a dream bawling my eyes out. I just started having anxiety attacks. I never took medication. My brother and I lived in an apartment together with his girlfriend in our late teens. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night, crying about my brother's girlfriend having a bandage around her head in the hospital, my mother in the background screaming, "She's too young," and her passing away in my dream. I kept telling her she needed to get her head checked out. I think something's wrong with her head. She always reassured me she's fine. Fast forward 4 years, my brother walking up to me at work bawling his eyes out had been up all night because her drunk mother hit her with her door of her car and hit her head on the concrete. She passed away from a brain hemorrhage. Love that woman. She was so innocent and beautiful. I don't know why I dreamt that, but it could be coincidence. Story 38. I have one that I wish I had an answer for cause ID. Really just like to know WTF was going on. It was Christmas night and I was hanging out with a friend after we were done with our family get-togethers. We were just driving around listening to music, and I was looking out the window, people watching. We drove up next to a 4-door sedan, and there was a family inside, a man, a woman, and 2 small children. The only weird thing was that they were all dressed as clowns, like big poofy red wigs, white faces, red noses, the works. The weirdness of seeing a car full of clowns and also seeing them on Christmas really freaked me out, and I started screaming at my friend to look over. He's afraid of clowns, so needless to say, he lost his, and as we were sitting there freaking out, they all looked over into our car. That caused him to really freak out, and he sped off. Why were those people dressed as clowns? Is there a weird association between clowns and Christmas I don't know about? Story 39. I have a dream one night with some vague imagery that I interpreted as my grandmother's soul leaving her body. I woke up knowing she was going to pass soon, but I decided it was just a dream. I called her a couple days later, and she said all was fine. 48 hours later, my dad called. She had sepsis and was in the hospital. She never woke up. Story 40. I went to sleep on Wednesday, and you had a dream that I did everything I usually do on Thursday to the school, have lunch, etc. When I wake up is Friday, and curious as I asked my family if they remembered what happened yesterday, and no one did. One is when I went to sleep at 7 a.m. Thursday and woke up at 4 p.m. Friday in my parents' bedroom. I did sleep there initially. When I asked WDH happened, they were confused and didn't understand why I thought I had slept thought the day when they remember me being up until later that day. Sorry if my writing, I don't speak English very well. Story 41. This is going to sound silly, but I swear it's true, and it felt glitchy. I remember a few years back, I was trying to patch a hole in drywall in an old job I had. The drywall mud I was using was the normal quick setting stuff I've used at least a dozen times before. Anyway, as I was trying to patch the hole about the size of 12 pipe, the mud wouldn't come off the knife. It was almost like I wasn't touching the wall to scrape the mud off, but I know I was touching the wall because the drywall knife was flexing like they do. It took like 4 times for the mud to finally come off the knife and fill the hole. It was pretty strange. Story 42. In high school, I remember going to English, and the teacher did roll call. She called my name, and I raised my hand and said him here. Then she stopped, saying, "So he's not here then." My friend and I laughed because I was obviously here, figured she was with me. That night, my mom got a call telling her I wasn't at classes today. I was actually marked absent. I go back to school the next day and tell my friend Mrs. English teacher actually freak in, counted me absent. And he just said, "Why wouldn't she?" Though to myself, haha, you're not funny, but I just let it slide because I was being with. Then one of my other friends sits down and asks, "You feeling better today? Or were you just playing hooky?" I was so confused. Then I go to my first hour, and that teacher hands me the work I supposedly missed from that day. I looked at my bag and had the same stuff guide and assignments already there to this day. I don't know if I missed that day of school or not. Story 43. About a couple of years ago, a friend sent me a video, and he asked me if I had a lost twin somewhere. It was a video made by amateur actors from the city I used to live in. There was this girl that looked just like me, she talked just like me, and her part on the sketch consisted of telling a joke I used to tell all the time. I was freaked out of my mind. For some stupid reason, I deleted that video, and I haven't been able to find it anywhere. And God knows I spent an embarrassing number of hours trying to confirm it even existed in the first place, lol. Story 44. When the last year of middle school, it happened 2 times in the same week. I dreamed about the questions and oral exams their nights before, and I got asked exactly these. Fun facts. I had 124 chance to be extracted for the first test and 112 for the second. These questions weren't asked again for the whole week. In both cases, I decided to look at exactly these answers while traveling to school, with my mom helping me. I got a 1010 because I knew everything about these, different prof and subject science and literature. I still don't get how it happened. But that helped me a lot to raise my reputation before finals. Edit I add that never happened again after that single strange week. Story 45. This happened to me several years ago while I was living in California and working a great job in a downtown coffee house. I loved everything about that job. I worked with fantastic people, and our shop was located in the city's historic district in a very old, very beautiful building that had once been a hotel in the 1800s, but had since been converted into apartments, lofts, and of course the big coffee house on the main floor. Being an early birdie and living only a couple blocks away from the coffee house, I was always scheduled to work the opening shift, which started at 4:15 a.m. It was the most unpopular shift, but it happened to be my absolute favorite one because I loved walking to work in the quiet of the early mornings as the rest of the city was sound asleep. Normally, downtown was quite loud and busy, full of people and constant activity, but in the early hours of the morning, it was still and silent, and I felt as if I was the only person in existence, walking through a ghost town. Every day, I arrived about 10 or 15 minutes early for my shift and would wait for my manager on the patio outside the shop. It was always just the two of us working that early shift, and my manager was often running a little bit behind and never arrived before I did, but I didn't mind at all. I liked to spend some time by myself on the patio outside of the darkened shop, gathering my thoughts while I waited for him to walk up with his keys to unlock the doors. One morning, as I was walking to work and approaching our building, I noticed that the coffee house was brightly lit up as all the lights were already turned on and shining through the store's giant glass windows. I was about 10 minutes early that morning, so I was very surprised to see that my manager had arrived before me and had already started opening up the shop. I walked up to the glass door and pulled on the handle to let myself in, only to find that it was locked shut. That wasn't really unusual, as we often kept the doors of the employee entrance and main entrance locked while we got everything ready for the day and went through our morning procedures until 5 a.m., which was our official opening time. What was unusual, though, was the sound of music I could clearly hear drifting through the speakers inside the store. This was during the holiday season, so we were playing Christmas music throughout the day, but we never turned it on until around 900 or so in the morning, out of respect for all tenants living in the apartments above us. But on this particular morning, I could hear the Christmas music already playing its familiar loop at a rather high volume inside the store. I thought it was odd, but decided that maybe my manager was just feeling extra festive that day and wanted to listen to some tunes while we worked. I knocked on the employee entrance door and waited for my manager to come and let me in. I looked through the glass and watched for him. He didn't come, so I knocked again and waited some more. He still didn't appear, so I knocked again and again. I then walked to the main entrance doors and tried knocking on those with no luck. I checked my watch and saw that I had 5 minutes until I needed to clock in. I knocked again, much louder this time, and looked inside through the glass door for any signs of my manager. And that's when I heard the muffled sound of voices coming from the back of the store, where the kitchen of our coffee shop was located. At that quiet, early hour in the morning, every sound seems to be amplified, and what I could distinctly hear was two male voices talking and laughing together. That was very unusual, as I had mentioned before that it was normally just me and my manager who opened up the shop, but I figured someone had probably just needed to pick up an extra shift. I knocked yet again and continued to listen to the sounds coming from the coffee shop. The men kept talking and laughing loudly. They seemed to be having a really great time. In addition to the music and the talking and laughter, I began to hear the sound of clanging dishes and also the sprayer of the 3-compartment steel kitchen sink being turned on and off, which was very, very unusual as there would be no dishes to wash before the store had even opened. I was also confused as to why my manager and whoever was with him were in the kitchen in the back of the store, because so much of our opening procedures, setting up the pastry case, brewing the coffee, preparing everything for the espresso machine were done at the front of the store where I was waiting to be let inside. At this point, I was getting a bit irritated as I was supposed to start work in just a few minutes and I needed to punch in our time clock. I hated clocking in late for work. I dug out my phone and dialed my manager's cell number. It didn't pick up, so I dialed the number to our coffee shop instead, and the 2 phones inside the shop, one in the back office and one up front by the register, started ringing. Once, twice, 3 rings and no answer. Now 4 rings and 5. I hung up and immediately dialed again, annoyed that they were making such a racket in there with the music and all the talking and the laughter that they probably couldn't even hear the phone at all. Just as before, nobody answered. I hung up and redialed the store for the 3rd time. The phone rang and went unanswered. And so I banged on the door yet again to no avail. I looked at my watch. I was officially late for work. As I was standing in front of the locked door with my phone against my ear, becoming more and more irritated, I noticed a pair of headlights reflecting in the glass, rolling up behind me. I turned around and saw something I did not expect at all. It was my manager. "I'm so sorry I'm late," he said as he climbed out of the driver's seat and shut his car door and hustled up at the shop's entrance. "I tried to get here as fast as I could," he said, as he moved toward me and fumbled with his keys, trying to find the one to the shop door. "You're mad," he said. "I can tell. I'm really sorry." Completely confused, I put my phone away and turned to head into the store with him. And that's when I lost my breath for a minute. The coffee shop was totally dark. None of the lights were on, not one single light, and it was dead quiet. The Christmas music had stopped, and so had the voices and laughter. All of the loud noise had disappeared. Every sound I'd been listening to just seconds before had suddenly vanished. "I promise he'll be here on time tomorrow," my manager said as he fit his key into the lock. "He'll even be early. You'll be shocked." Little did he know that I could not possibly be more shocked to see him than I was at that very moment, as he opened the door to the silent, completely empty coffee house.